Good afternoon, lovely, glorious, wonderful human beings. How are you all? I hope you're well. Whew, I'm warm, I'm so warm. Well, this is a continuation of the same day as the last video you saw, so still got my dirty tomato fingers. I'm going to start off by saying I found my glasses. Well, Sheena and I found them at almost exactly the same moment. We both spotted them. Yes, they were upside down underneath one of my squash plants from where I'd been leaning in to get pictures of them, and I'd kind of had my glasses, I often just, I'm sure you all do it too, just hook them like that. So for instance, when I'm whizzing about on the tube, I need my glasses to look at the destination board, the departure board, but then when I sit on the tube to read, just hook my glasses there and they've been perfectly fine. But that was a bit of a scare this morning. I don't mean a scare, you know what I mean. The point is, I do need my glasses for looking at things in the distance. I have my prescription sunglasses, so if all else failed, I could wear them. But I was, for a moment, imagining I was going to have to wait till autumn to find these again once everything dies back. Anyway, they're found. Good. It's been an absolutely fantastic morning. It's really warm. It's not too warm to work, but it's definitely a bit of a sweaty day. A day for going a little bit more slowly than I would normally, but it's certainly a workable day. And where we'd had all of that rain at the weekend, what's been fantastic looking through the garden this morning is, because everything is quite so lush now, of course all the plants, they're acting as their own mulch, so that the soil, the moisture in the soil isn't evaporating as quickly as it would have done even just say 4 weeks ago. So there's a beautiful, beautiful smell all through the garden of sort of damp soil and that damp, shady underside of all the lushness. It's gorgeous. So this afternoon I must crack on. I really am playing quite a bit of catch up for July. I've missed so many days, but the priority this afternoon is to get out the white onions, and in their stead will go, I think, probably the Cavolo Nero, and then to have the last of the peas out and get the lentils out, and then I think I'm going to put the sprouts, the Brussels sprouts, in there. But I'm just going to have a check of the brassicas in the cold frame because, of course, I'm so forgetful these days. Honestly, I need to tie knots in my hanky and wear it on my head. I was thinking, that rain, brilliant, don't need to go to the garden to water. So the last time I watered the brassicas was 4 days ago in the cold frame. They were all looking a little bit sorry this morning. I have found in the past that when it comes to planting them out, they are pretty much desperate to get out, and when they go out they do look a bit weedy and a bit straggly and struggling, but then anyone who's been watching my channel for the last couple of years, you'll have seen how the Cavolo Nero does eventually. It does great for me here. So, yay, happy days. Right. Before I get too wistful and start to just do nothing, I think I better go and start with some of the work. So in order to harvest the onions, I need to make space for them on the onion drying rack. The onion drying rack has been very busy with the garlic. Now, I was planning to braid my garlic again this year. I didn't braid it last year, didn't have the time. I was going to braid it this year. It's a really neat, easy way of storing it. But, well, yeah, they are so dry, so dry. There's just no point in trying to braid them, they're just going to snap. So instead, I'm just going to give them a bit of a clean up, snip off the worst of the roots, just give them a trim, and then they'll just sit in this basket. The good thing about having the basket, oh my goodness, that sun again. The good thing about having the basket is the air can still circulate, so there's no chance of them sweating in there. There's no chance of them sweating anyway, because, oh my goodness, crunchy bone dry. Yeah, so they're just sitting there, and then as and when I need one, pop down to the grocery store that is my shed and help myself. It's weird this year. Also, just to say, I don't like the look of that one. As I do this now, I'll just go through and make sure that they're all looking in tip-top condition for storage. There's no point ever storing anything that's looking even mildly hinky. Either use it, get it used fresh now, or chop it up and freeze it as is, or use it to make a meal and then freeze that. Oh, just to say as well, I don't know if you can see that? I've got a ton of apples on the table. This is so sad. We've lost one of our apple trees. So you've often heard me talk about our dear friend Paddy, who died, it's a couple of years this September. Gorgeous, gorgeous old guy. Beautiful voice, beautiful accent, Irish guy. The most sparkly, twinkly eyes you ever did see. And he had quite a big plot. Half of it was fruit and the other half was veg. And the fruit was so well established, and we were having problems trying to get people to take plots at that time, that it was decided to, with the fruit area, keep it and make it for communal use. So the end of his plot that had been all the veggies, that was let straight away to someone. But like I say, the fruit end was kept, and it's for all of us to use. Oh, I should go down and see if there's any blackberries. Anyway, so this apple tree was one that was in Paddy's old garden, and absolutely covered in apples. And you know, you think about how much apples weigh. So if you're bringing home, you know, a bag full of apples from the garden, you'll know that's heavy, isn't it? And that's just a few apples from the tree. These trees are, this year, they're all laden, absolutely laden. And, you know, sometimes we do see a bough break. When the bough breaks, oh, I'm thinking of Little Baby songs now. Yeah, sometimes we'll see a bough break under the weight of the apples. But it looks like when we had this kind of storminess over the weekend, it's just taken the whole tree over. But what's really surprising, I was just looking at it now, is almost nothing of roots to it. So the roots, they're about that deep. There's just nothing to them. We don't quite understand why, but when you sort of look at the amount of fruit that was on it, it's hardly surprising that the tree couldn't stand up. So unfortunately the tree's not savable. Ah, such a shame. But I think what would be nice, because we have kept that as a communal orchard area, is if we spend a few quid out of the community pot and just treat ourselves to another little apple tree in Paddy's name. I think that would be very fitting, wouldn't it? Yay! So yeah, what I was going to say is, what a weird year. I was thinking about this as I was getting all the garlic out of the shed, that all year, and I know it because I've said it in so many videos, but all year I felt like I'm running to catch up with myself. I felt behind in the garden. You know, all through the madness of May, and I was thinking, well, that's okay because things will calm down in June. But then, of course, in June I ended up doing half the stuff that I didn't get done in May. And then normally July would be the really chilled month in the garden. But then I got ridiculously busy, you know, elsewhere. Obviously, I couldn't predict the date of my mum's operation. It was originally talked about for being September, which would have been great. But it was brought forward, so that took a chunk at the time, took a week out, and my sister's visit had been planned for ages, but I thought that was the only thing that was going to happen in July. My sister's visit, and obviously my regular visits to my great aunt Teapot. But yeah, so this whole year, I don't feel that there's been any point in the year when I've sort of stood back, looked at the garden and thought, that's it, my to-do list is done. Obviously in another week there'll be more things to do, but for today, yeah, I'm done. I've not had that at all this year. Oh my goody goodness. So, I don't know, I think obviously I've got more going on now with the shop and sewing, and all the social media stuff takes up quite a bit of time. Don't begrudge it, love it. But yeah, this year's run away from me somewhat. So, I don't know. I think I'll get the jobs done I want to do today. But I think in an ideal world, I have a slightly cooler day. Please, a slightly cooler day. And I reckon I need a good sort of 8-10 hour day down here. Weeds aren't too bad, I'm not too worried about weeds, but yeah, tying in, trimming, deadheading. I've got a massive deadheading to do again. So behind, oh my goodness. And of course, actually I might try and do some deadheading in the calendula today, because I think the heat is bringing the blooms out much more quickly than normal. And of course that rain has been a great thing. That's our Gary. I'm doing my garlic! Yeah, the rain will have given them a bit of a spurt, so if I can get them deadheaded today, I should be able to get a nice another flurry of blooms to harvest. I've not harvested much of them this year yet, because they've been going over more quickly than I can harvest. So I think what I'd better do now is shut up. Shut up, get this lot trimmed, tidies, stashed away, and then go and look at this onion harvest. I'm quite excited actually, because I haven't had a really close up look at the onions for weeks now. I just leave them be. But as I was walking past the bed this morning, I thought, ooh, a couple of you look quite big and juicy. So yeah, I'll crack on with this, and then let's go and lift some onions in this beautiful sunshine. Oh, I've just got to try for this big one first. Let's be having you. They've got a really shallow root system. Whoops, carefully. But even so, try to avoid yanking them. Let me show you this one. Try to avoid yanking them out, because the danger is you'll tear its neck off, and we want this to, I'll talk about drying in a minute, but we want to keep them as intact as possible. So you see, not much root. What's amazing is how moist it is down there. So I'm interested to see, I'm just going to find myself a perch to sit on, hang on. Gently move some of the lavender away. Yes, I think we can park up ourselves here. Hold on. That's better. Actually, just, oh, the lavender, the smell. Hi bees. Oh, they're everywhere. Just to say, with the lavender, ideally, I'd be getting on with starting to harvest. But you know what? I just can't bring myself to, because every time I'm here, it's covered in bees. There were quite a few butterflies earlier. I don't know where they've all gone to now, but yeah, I'm going to leave it for the bees. They're more important than me having lavender bags. Anyway, sorry. Oh, what's prickling me? Oh, it's the self-seeded borage. So this variety is Jet Set. I've grown it for the last 6-7 years now. It's the one I started with It worked really well for me, so I've grown it each year. I start them off as sets. Partly it's habit and partly I just forget to sow seed. So yeah, I start them off as sets about mid-April, so they're mid-April to mid-May, mid-June, mid-July, 3 months, and well, you saw the size of that one. Now what I'm interested to see this year is how this mulching has worked, because previously I haven't mulched my onions, and one of my, I don't know where that one's, I probably hit it with the strimmer. One of my concerns with the mulch was, am I going to trap too much moisture and risk getting rot? Doesn't look like so far. So yes, I was a little bit concerned about that, but that looks okay. And what I'm going to be really interested to see is, because I think I was mentioning this the other day, I don't tend to water my onions very much at all. Look at this hoverfly. Oh, beautiful. I don't tend to water my onions very much at all, which means that that's completely hollow. I don't know what happened to that. Yeah, it just means that the bed always bakes really, really dry and hard. I've always followed my onions with brassicas. That's good in the rotation system of things. But what it means is I've usually had to give the bed a bit of a dig. However, I'm looking down here, if I just move this mulch aside, yeah, actually, the soil looks really lovely and friable still. It's moist down there. Great. The main thing is, it didn't hold too much moisture that the onions have rotted. They are a little bit damp today, obviously, because we had all that rain at the weekend, and they're certainly damper than I would normally like to lift them. But we are due more rain this week, so better get them out today, get them on that onion drying rack, they'll be grand. I'm going to actually bring you guys in closer because I really want to show you the soil and how it's done under this really, really quite heavy mulch of grass clippings. Right, let's pop a couple more out and then I'll show you the soil. Remember the other day when I was doing the tomatoes, I was talking about scent memory. I also think it's true of sound memory. And as I'm doing these, oh, that's another piggy. As I'm doing these, I can hear little crickets chirping away. And the sound of crickets always makes me think of holidays in Greece. Isn't that gorgeous? Whoa, what a beauty. I think I've done all right this year with the onions. And, you know, I've had quite a few friends who have not had the best onion harvest ever. Anyway, right, digressing. So, this was that very thick mulch. Move it aside a bit. Can you see? It's actually really quite moist down there. And, you know, considering this ground hasn't been touched, oh sorry worm, this ground's not been touched for 3 months, that's still, you know, this soil is beautifully friable still. Look at that, that's great. I'm not going to disturb it too much today. Get these onions out and then start thinking about getting brassicas in. Hooray! chunky monkey. Wow, it is really moist down there, it's amazing. The other great thing about this mulch is, oh, there's a little one. Speaking of, I think I've pulled out 5 weeds. It's amazing. Oh, that one. Rotten. That's not bad out of this lot so far. So once they're all up and I've inspected them to make sure they are good for drying and storing, I will... God, there's another huge one. I can't get over the size of some of them this year. Yeah, once I've inspected them to make sure they are worthy of drying and storing, I'll have a little count up. And once I've counted, I can work out, divide my... Oh, another one, that's a dodgy one. I can then work out, divide how many I've got by 52, which will give me how many I have got to live on per week for the next year. On the other side. Oh, I'll come round to do those in a minute. But I think so far, so good. Actually, because it's such, it is really quite baking warm today, I might leave these on the surface of the soil for now, just to dry out a little bit. Disturb that moustache, just to dry out a little bit, the worst of the moisture off. I'll get on with another job, and then I'll come back to these as my last job of the day. Oh, another chunky monkey hiding right on the end. Yeah, I'm definitely pleased with the onion harvest this year. Woohoo! Well, isn't this a happy and super pleasing sight? I've just had a quick tot up and there's just a little over 100. So that means I've got 2 whites per week for the next year. I'll probably have about the same reds as well. So yes, 2 a week for the next year. Woohoo! And I just thought I'd quickly show you these. This was a little row. Now, I think it's called Stuttgart. This was some spares that Gary had. Oops, sorry. I'm handling it with one hand. Can you see it's slightly flatter? Actually, let me put it next to one of my jet set, and then you'll be able to see. So you can see the jet set is much sort of larger, rounder, and this, I'm sure it's called Stuttgart, is sort of more shallow and flat. I've never tried them before. I don't know how they taste. Actually, Gary's down here today, so I'm going to maybe just pop over and ask him about their taste. But it's nice to try something new. Even nicer. Oh my goodness. When you get to stand back and appreciate that the work did come to fruition. You know what I was saying earlier when I was doing the garlic about how I keep feeling behind this year and I feel bad towards my garden because I'm not looking after it. Well, you know what? The garden doesn't seem to mind. And beautifully, wonderfully, the garden is looking after me. Oh yes. The size of a big fat orange. Gorgeous. Oh, a little bit of shade. just this tiny little corner outside the shed at the moment. It's lovely though. So I just popped over to speak to Gary to ask him about the onion, that sort of slightly flatter one. It is Stuttgarter Giant. Did he say giant? I don't think mine are particularly giant, but they're certainly lovely. And I was asking about the flavour. Is there anything sort of really remarkable about the flavour compared to, say, my bog standard Jet Set? And he said, no, not particularly. It's purely a shape thing. So anyway, I'm delighted to have a different shape this year. So it's going to take me ages to get all these onions hung up. I'm not going to film that. I'm not going to bore you with it. And I actually think by the time I've done it, I've got a couple of little jobs I really want to see to today. I need to go home, unfortunately, so I'm not going to get a chance to put any of my brassicas in today, but actually that's okay because it's really quite hot today. I'd rather do it on a cooler day, and it looks like over the next couple of days we're going to have quite a lot of rain. Great, get that ground nice and wet, although it is really pretty moist, as you saw. But what I'm thinking is, I think the temperature's going to come down a bit with that rain, so I might just try and pop down again in the next couple of days just to quickly pop my brassicas in. And if I do that, I'll bring you along, because it's so nice to have your company in the garden when I'm here. Anyway, so drying and storing my onions, same process every year, dead simple. So you can see it's flopped over, and I should have probably mentioned this, but that's one of the sort of indicators that they're pretty much ready for harvest. They flop over. There's still quite a bit of green in that leaf, as you can see. In order to store them for long-term keeping, I want them quite dry. So what I'll do in the onion drying rack, I'll put them on the rack upside down. So any of the moisture that's sort of around this little root ball, that's going to evaporate. Any excess moisture can, in theory, sort of drain down the neck. And as it dries, that skin shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And eventually what we want is we want to create a seal at the neck. So as that skin shrinks, it gets really, really, really tight around the neck. Once that's tightened, it's sort of sealed, so any of that gorgeous juiciness of the onion that's in there gets retained. So at this stage, when you're harvesting and drying and getting ready for store, you've lifted your onions, give everything a really good look over. We don't want any bad apples in the barrel, as it were. You've selected the ones you want to dry. I don't do anything to them, so I don't trim any leaves at the moment. I don't trim the roots, absolutely nothing. The last thing you want to be doing is to be peeling off all the layers of skin. You think, ooh, that's a bit grubby and tatty. Ooh, I'll just have that off. Don't. The skin is its storage packet. The skin is its Tupperware. The skin is its Kilner jar or ball canning jar. That's its packaging. That's what's going to keep it for anything up to a year. So don't be tempted to trim, make pretty. Don't be tempted to do anything with them at the moment other than let them dry out. It'll probably take, well, if we keep having temperatures like this, it's only going to take a couple of weeks probably. And then when they get to that stage, I'll show you this as we go along, of course, but at that stage I will just trim the roots off, trim a lot of the foliage off, and then I will be tying them into my onion strings for long-term storage, as I do every single year. Yay! It's going to take me an age to get all of these threaded into that drying rack, so I'd better get on with it, hadn't I? Happy harvesting, everyone. I'm suddenly really running out of time. So, rather than thread all the onions through the drying rack today, which takes so long, it's worth it, but it does take ages. For now, I'm just going to just lay them all out on the top of the rack. It's so warm and dry in here that they should be absolutely fine. I'm making sure to leave a bit of space between each of them, so there's space for the air to circulate. But yeah, it's one of those days. Oh, it's so annoying, you know. I would absolutely love to just stay here for another 6 hours until nightfall today. I would love to. Unfortunately, I can't. But I do feel now that I know I'm huffing and puffing a bit, but it's a bit of an awkward space to get this done because I've got the I don't know if you can see, I've got the wheelbarrow here, one of them. Yeah, it's been such a hectic July. I really have got behind with things, and I don't just mean the garden. So I'm doing what I can when I can, and then I'm hoping that sort of in the next week or so I'll have caught up with a lot of other stuff that I ought to have done, and I'm hoping therefore to get back to a slightly more normal schedule of about 3 sessions in the garden per week. That's sort of 3 sessions to work. I do also quite often, I mean almost nightly in the summer, do whatever work I'm doing in the day at home and then come down here in the evening, much as you would, you know, if you were out working in an office job. Come down in the evening, water, tinker, but more than anything, just to sit and be and enjoy. So, I think it's high time that I said cheerio to you all. Still got half a barrow to go. Yeah, it's time for me to say cheerio to you all. I'm pretty sure you'll be seeing me again before too long. Yes, you will, because I need to get the brassicas in. I'll show you that when I'm doing it. Also, someone asked about this the other day, about, I've got my thingies in a tangle, about cooking videos. Well, to be honest, at the moment, I've not been wanting to do much cooking because it's so hot, but also it's just a time thing. You know, if I make a recipe which, if I do a recipe which is, say, when it eventually ends up on screen, you see 20 minutes, and let's say if I was doing it in real time for myself, it's something that takes me 30, 40 minutes. When I film it, it ends up taking a couple of hours just because of stopping, starting, setting up, what have you, and I just haven't had time. I have had no time and too hot. But I am hoping to start doing some more recipe videos, maybe in a month or so, when life in general has calmed down a bit. We're not quite so hot. And obviously, as my produce starts to come in. Yay! So, gosh, it's warm. Let me stop for a minute. Yeah, so for now, it's cheerio. I hope your harvests are going great as well. I know am I in shot if I sit down a second? Yes, I am. I hope your harvests are going great. It feels like we're just on the cusp of it really, really going mad. You know, before we know it, tomatoes will be getting ripe. The beans will be coming thick and fast. Oh, isn't it just glorious? And you know, it's so funny, I literally a few seconds ago, I saw my friend Gary with his barrow load of onions. He's walking them home. He hangs his up. He's very fortunate, he's got a garden. So he's going to hang them out in his garden to dry. And it's just a wonderful time of year, isn't it, when the first of the big harvests start coming in. It's happy work, isn't it? Oh, I love it so much. Anyway, for now, cheerio. Take care of yourselves. I will see you again really soon. Bye for now.